Is Maul Shadowlord making it fun to be a Star Wars fan again? I think so. Let's get into this thing and drink up. I've been thinking a lot lately, as I shouldn't say a lot lately because it's been airing for just a few short weeks. However, Maul Shadowlord is so good. It's brought back our ace queen, our sissy Sith himself. Maul is back and he is badder than ever. This time he's got a whole crew with him that is just making this show so much fun to watch. And while I've been watching it, I've also been on the social media a whole lot more, where I feel like it's kind of been fun again, right? There's like no arguing, no telling everyone how terrible the Acolyte is, how woke Star Wars is. If it took a villain to bring that energy back to Star Wars, I am here for it, and I cannot wait to get into it. And I've been reflecting a lot on Maul, on the world that we are back in, and I can't wait to discuss that with you right now. So let's get into this thing. Why Maul is Star Wars' most tragic villain. The internet and the Star Wars dude bro discourse of it all, you know, the ones that talk about who's more powerful, Maul or Vader. They talk about fighting styles. They know all of the lightsaber twirling, this number versus that number, all of that stuff. If that's you, good on you. I love that for you, and I love that matters. But they talk about midichlorians. They talk about prophecy. All of their social media bios have the word Sith in it, or a villain helmet up there, or whatever it is. I've been thinking a lot about them, and I've been thinking about how actually none of that matters. What if Vader and Maul aren't different in strength? But what if they're different because of opportunity and timing? What if they were different because one of them got interrupted and the other didn't? Let's think about that. Welcome to Pink Milk. I'm Bryan, and I serve Star Wars queerly. And I want to start something with you right now. But before we get into it, if big old gay Star Wars or snark, sass, shade, good times, if you're a new fan or an old fan, whatever Star Wars flavor you like, if this is something that sounds interesting to you, please follow wherever you're watching / listening to this. Leave a comment. Let's get into some conversations, because if there's anything I love about Star Wars, it is communicating with fans who can agree to disagree. We can shout, enjoy together, or we can have a deep, heavy conversation on the meaning of Star Wars. Anyway, if that's your thing, follow me here. Do your things on the socials. I can't wait to talk about this with you. All right, one simple thing. I want us to think about Maul, and that he's not scary just because he's powerful. He's scary because he never changes. Most villains, most often, evolve in some way, shape, or form. Maul doesn't. Maul loops. He doesn't really have a character arc, or if he does have a character arc, that arc is all about the repeating system that he keeps finding himself in over and over and over, whether he's flying through the streets of Coruscant, sending probots out to chase down Anakin Skywalker or Obi-Wan, whoever it is, Padme, down in the deserts of Tatooine, if he's building spider legs in a junkyard, if he's resurrected by his mom and fighting alongside of his brother, he's always finds himself stuck in the same system. And Star Wars doesn't just tell stories. They actually tell patterns all of the time. I think it's one of the things that you notice in Star Wars everywhere when you start thinking about it. And it's probably one of the things that we like the most. Love or hate The Last Jedi, which we'll talk about a little later today. It changed the pattern. It tried to break that pattern, which I found interesting. Did it work all the way for me? Not so sure. But I like the idea of challenging a pattern. I like the idea of a pattern to speculate, when is it going to break, who's going to break it, who's going to repeat it. All of those things is the simple storytelling that Star Wars finds itself in and gives us great characters to play in that. So once you notice the patterns in Star Wars, you see them everywhere. Broken people don't just fall once, they fall in cycles. And this idea changes everything, because based on a lot of the ideology that The Clone Wars brought in with Maul was all about a Greek myth. A man named Sisyphus. Yes, talking Star Wars queerly, serving it with shade and with sass. And now we're talking about Sisyphus. I mean, and our ace queen Maul, that boy can sissy, that walk and sashay that lightsaber away, and I am here for it. However, the Greek myth Sisyphus, he was condemned by the gods to roll a builder up a hill forever. Every time boy hits the top of the hill, the boulder rolls right back down. No ending, no resolution, just repetition. Philosopher Albert Camus wrote once about this, and he said, the struggle itself, well, it's enough to fill a man's heart. And that struggle, that emptiness is why we connect to Maul. I think all of us have had moments in our life where the struggle overpowered us. Maybe we all had that boyfriend and somewhere a long time ago. Hopefully it wasn't a long ago. And if you find yourself with this person right now, cut the cord. All right. I've been there. Don't do it. All of us have found ourselves in relationships, whether it's a romantic partner, a relative, a friend, a coworker, that no matter what we do, it just doesn't work. We just try to build it back up and we just roll right back down that hill, and it creates such an empty feeling. That struggle is so real. And I actually think beyond the horns, beyond the rad makeup, beyond the kicks and the flips and the sachets and the sissy walks that Maul loves to serve us, that's what we're connecting to. I think we all connect to those times in our life. Hopefully they're behind us, not in front of us. If we're currently in them, let this be your opportunity to clip them away. Sissy, that walk right out of that bad, toxic relationship. But these are the things that we connect to him about. We've all been there at some point in our life, a time where life struggles replaced our meaning, but where struggle outweighed the future and it just felt never ending. That's Maul. Not a villain with a plan, a system stuck in motion, revenge, loss, obsession, survival, revenge again. He doesn't ever escape it. He just re-enters it over and over and over and over again. And this is where Vader differs greatly from Maul, where that debate of power, fighting skill, midichlorian counts, training doesn't matter. Dudes both got robot legs. That's about as in common as they've got, and they probably both hate Palpatine, right? Maybe there's two things our dudes have in common, but it isn't the power or the fighting style or its technique. He differs in timing because of an opportunity given to Vader and not to Maul. He gets an interruption, being Vader. Vader gets an interruption from Luke Skywalker, his son. Luke Skywalker doesn't defeat Vader with the Force. It's not about the fighting techniques. It isn't about the time he had to train. It isn't about midichlorians. It's about identity. And when Luke Skywalker says to Dad, I'm a Jedi like my father before me, Luke Skywalker saw that Darth Vader and that Anakin Skywalker were two different people. No, Obi-Wan didn't lie. It's all from a certain point of view. And that line isn't about truth. It's about recognition, recognizing that Anakin was a person before Darth Vader. Luke looks at Vader and says, you're not only Vader, you're not only this. And that creates a space for Vader to breathe in. It gives him a moment to reflect. It gives him a moment to wonder and to ponder and to remember in between each of those mechanical breaths. I remember Padme. I remember those ideals I once stood for. Can I go back there again? Those are deep thoughts inside of Vader. But between those mechanical breaths, he had space to think. Maul never gets that opportunity. He never gets that space because he always is in that cycle. He never, ever, ever gets an opportunity to breathe. And that, I think, is where the biggest difference between Maul and Vader sits. This is where Star Wars stops being fantasy, it stops being a space opera, and it stops being polite and starts getting real. If you know, you know. This isn't just mythology, it's a cycle. And it's a cycle that we've all experienced. It's the anger that loops in all of us when we reflect on bad times. Like, look, as a gay dude and a gay dude who came up in the there's lots of trauma and lots of triggers that make me angry like that. And I have to breathe. I have to do my box breathing. In 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and sit for 4. And you do that. Box breathing's great. Everyone do it. Maul, try some breathing. But in those moments, I get triggered and I find myself in that pattern, the same patterns that Maul gets into. Luckily now I have not 1, not 2, but 3 Luke Skywalkers at home to remind me of the person that I can be. So it's that cycle that separates Maul and Vader. It's the pain that becomes identity. It's the only difference between healing and repetition is interruption. If there's only one thing that can break repetition is interruption. Nobody is interrupting Maul, and that is where the real tragedy is. That's what's so heartbreaking. So if Maul represents a cycle that never stops, the next question is, what happens when an entire system learns that you can watch these cycles and instead of stopping them, you watch them and you study them? That is where the Empire changes shape, and that's where things get colder. That's what we're going to be introduced into this show as well, and I'm very, very excited.
It's Darth Vader, watch out! And he's got a lightsaber.
It's Kenner's Star Wars action figures, each sold separately.
I got you now, Ben Kenobi.
With R2-D2 and C-3PO. There's even Chewbacca and Han Solo.
Someone's coming, Chewie. Who's there? It's Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker. Now I know the Force is with us.
Darth Vader, R2-D2, C-3PO, and other Kenner Star Wars action figures, each sold separately.
Speaking of the Empire, they're right around the corner. They are sitting just outside of this city, Jerinx, that we've been introduced to in this show. And they're bringing a level of cold calculation to the show that is going to be much needed. But speaking of the look of a show and the Empire and how these two things are going to go together is really cool. So the question is, why does Star Wars, and more specifically, why does Maul Shadow Lord look so different? Why does it matter? The Empire isn't built on fear alone. It's built on surveillance. Hello, my lovely little spybot droid, Glup Shadow for life. Surveillance changes everything. Trust me, I said this earlier. I'm a gay dude who came up in the 90s, and I understand surveillance more than I wish I did. Understand the gaze of, and not the gaze, Gays, the gaze, Gaze, of law enforcement and government watching every move you make and waiting to tear you down. Welcome back to Pink Milk. This is where we serve Star Wars queerly. If you know, you know. If you didn't, now you do. But I want to sit with this idea for just a minute. The Empire doesn't need to destroy rebellion. It just needs to observe it. And I think that is something that has been changing in this new era of Star Wars with Andor, which we'll talk about here in a second. And I think that's going to be a big part of this Maul's story going forward, which I'm really excited to see how that comes. The Empire, we are known as starkness, as sterile, as bland, as procedural. And now we're going to be introduced with that crossed with Maul's chaos. And I really can't wait to see what that looks like story-wise, because I think we're seeing what it looks like visually in this really wonderful story. But if Star Wars doesn't need to destroy rebellion, what does it need to do? It needs to observe it. That's it. Observation creates doubt. Observation creates fear. And ultimately, observation creates obedience. And that is what the Empire does. That was the Empire we knew when we first met them back in A New Hope. We were finally seeing sparks of rebellion, a new hope rising out of the galaxy to break from that obedience. But now here we are before that story, post everything we learned in Andor. It is time floppy, confusing as Star Wars can be. I also love it because it recontextualizes how you watch everything. It's so great. But in Andor, we were introduced to the Imperial Secretary Bureau, or the ISB. And they are Empire's internal intelligence systems. It handles surveillance, counterintelligence, political monitoring, internal threat prediction, and it doesn't react to rebellion. That's what's so scary about it. They don't react to rebellion. They study it. They understand it. They model it. And then they learn to control it. In Andor, the ISB is not theatrical. They're not dressed up in magic cloaks with over-the-top dialogue, lightning flying out of their hands. There's no laser swords. Not with the ISB. They are not a lightsaber. They're a scalpel. And I know they know right where to cut. They're procedural. They're precise. Characters like Dedra Meero and Partagaz, they speak like analysts, not villains. Makes them so much scarier. There was nothing over the top, even towards the end of Dedra, when she was still starting to really go cuckoo up here because of all the villainy that she was doing. They never got over the top, and it made them incredibly scary because they were very different than a Star Wars villain that we know. We are about to meet our ace queen. Maybe Maul's more over the top than Palpatine. But if Palpatine's more over the top, it's just by a little horn, right? It's just by a little horn because Maul is pretty dramatic, and that chaos, that drama is about to be met head to head, face to face with the ISB, with the Imperials, and I can't wait to see what that looks like. But they talk about behavioral anomalies. They talk about data patterns, sector instability. Rebellions become measurable, predictable, manageable. That's what's so scary in Andor. That is what's going to be really interesting about this because there is nothing predictable, nothing measurable. There's really nothing manageable about Maul. He is just chaos. It is rage after rage after rage, as we've discussed, because every time dude goes to take that breath that he's never been afforded, something goes wrong. So how is the ISB, how is the Empire go and deal with that? I mean, we know that they're going to send Vader, probably is going to send off some of the Inquisitors after him, who maybe they're a little more unpredictable, but how the galaxy, how the Empire is going to work against Maul and his Shadow Syndicate is really, really exciting. The real shift, though, is that the Empire isn't just oppressive. They're informational. It doesn't crush emotion, it tracks it. And once emotion becomes data, people become systems. And right now, in Maul Shadow Lord, the threat of them is right there outside of Jerich's city's wall. Their cold and their calculated menace is about to counter Maul's chaos. And it's felt not just because of the show's writing, but like I said, it's also visceral by design. The visual language of Maul Shadow Lord is pretty incredible. I know there's been a lot of talk about this in other shows, but I don't know if I've heard it quite the way I'm seeing it, and I'm really excited about it. But Lucasfilm didn't just update how Star Wars looks, they changed what it feels like to watch it. And I think that is the thing that you can't touch. It's intangible. That's the part of art that we react to, that we don't always know what we're reacting to. It's a feeling, and I think the show has captured a feeling beautifully. Dave Filoni described the approach as Clone Wars, but a little bit more extreme. Personally, I like what the creative team went with this, and they went a little bit further, calling the style painterly malice. The deep reds, the deep shadows, the purples, that's not just an aesthetic. That's an emotional design. Right design, fear, contradiction, instability is painted, literally painted right into the design of this show, right into the production. There was a lot of actual paint being done, whether it was oil on glass that's used as texture on top of the film. And if you are a creative person like me, if you're an illustrator who works digitally, you know the power of texture and overlays and layers and layers and layers of texture can add so much. Rebels, you were the first to kind of go there with a lot of the texture on your clothing against a very streamlined silhouettes. It was great. I love of Rebels. It was so wonderful. But they've also, the artist not only painted on glass to overlay on top of the film, but they also went old school, little Macquarie like, and put oil to canvas in a lot of the backdrops. And then the artists, they would scan those oil paintings, put them into the computer, and give a more tactile background up against and juxtaposition to the digital animation style that Star Wars is so well known for in this Clone Wars era, but it makes it feel not perfectly digital, adding just a little bit of that handmade feel, that imperfect texture against digital perfection. And that's the chaos that's the chaos that makes this show feel so alive. It feels like how Maul probably feels. It's very immersive. Its stability is what systems want you to believe. Then right now, Star Wars Shadow Lord doesn't want you to feel stable because Maul himself is very not stable. Right now, Star Wars isn't interested in polish. Let me put it that way. We're not interested in polish right now. We're interested in pressure. We're interested in instability. And what happens when control starts breaking the frame? It's something I've been thinking about. Like, it's very Shakespeare too, of let's turn to have an aside, break that fourth wall. And no, please don't go and pull a Deadpool. I don't need to have Maul break the fourth wall. And I know it's been done before, but looking at you, Boba Fett, special edition, looking at the camera, it doesn't work for me. Never has, never will. So I don't need characters to literally break the fourth wall, but I feel like the art right now is maybe breaking the fourth wall. It's breaking through the frame, quite literally.
The Star Wars collection comes the Stormtrooper, the Sand People, and all 20 action figures, including new Hammerhead, Snaggletooth, and more, each sold separately. And now, Boba Fett, Star Wars villain with his laser rifle. Boba Fett is not yet available in stores, but you can get him free with 4 proofs of purchase from any Star Wars action figures. Details on specially marked packs at participating stores. Offer ends May 31st. Star Wars action figures sold separately from Kenner.
And I think Star Wars is speaking directly to the tension in the fandom. During the sequel trilogy, I feel like Disney, Lucasfilm, probably Disney, was running away from the tension. Let's go back to the good times. Let's go back before there was a prequel. Let's go back when it was just nothing but pure love, even though were they not around for the Ewok hate? You love Star Wars. Nerds are passionate. Nerds fight a lot. And then after the sequel trilogy, actively running away from that tension, I feel by the time the Acolyte came out again 2 years ago, triggering again the reason I stopped making content for a while, was and honestly, leave it to queer chaos and queer showrunners and all of that stuff. But the queer folks behind Star Wars at the time intentionally stoked the fire. Bad move, in my opinion. Love the idea, love a little chaos, love a little middle finger up to people. One of my favorite things, but marketing wise, I think going right after the audience wasn't the brightest move with the Acolyte, and I actually think it challenged the show. The show was doing enough questioning on its own and pushing boundaries that I wish the art could have done the talking. But you know what? At least we're getting the art doing the talking now. So where the sequel trilogy ran away from the tension, the Acolyte literally pointed and poked and stoked the fire. Maul Shadow Lord is actively in it, engaging with it, and it's forcing us to look at it. It's messy, it's dark, and honestly, right now, it is so much fun. So if the Empire is pressure, if Maul is countering that pressure with chaos, then the next question is simple. What happens to someone born directly inside of that pressure and invited to join the chaos? That's where Devin enter. All right, let's see. Devin, could she be the missing story in the sequel trilogy? Sequel trilogy rewrite incoming a little later. Star Wars, in my opinion, does not need more heroes. It needs more characters who break. Breaking is where stories truly begin. And right now, the internet is a buzzing with speculation. I love me some speculation. I don't care what the internet says. I don't care what content creators say. Speculate away. This is just fun. I am one random queen on the internet. I don't have any more information than any of y'all do. And this time of like, well, they said this and now I want that needs to end. Let's have fun speculating again. It is like, it's so incredibly important to nerd culture, whether it's comics, Star Wars, that dirty word, Star Trek, whatever it is. It's half the fun. Our last episode with Alden, you and I spoke about this, but like The fights, the arguments, the heated debates, whatever you want to call them, in the middle of a comic book store made it so much fun to be a nerd. The internet should be like the comic book store of all comic book stores. Endless rack of get their point of view. It should be so much fun. Anyway, they are a buzzin' with who Devin could become. Could she be Darth Talon? I don't know. Anyway, we're back. I'm Bryan, and if you haven't yet subscribed, please do leave a comment. Tell me what you think about Maul, about the ISB, or one of Star Wars' newest characters, Devin Izara. All right, so speculation station. She could be Darth Talon. Who is she? Let's do a quick 1, 2, 3. Well, Darth Talon is a character that has the internet stoked. She comes from Star Wars Legacy Comics. She's in Legends continuity. She exists roughly 130 years after Return of the Jedi. She is a Sith assassin under Darth Krayt, and she is a part of one Sith. Fully covered in black tattoos against her red skin. She's very reminiscent of Maul, and she is trained as an enforcer following Sith ideology. She isn't just a warrior. She really isn't Darth Maul 2.0, and she certainly isn't just the scantily clad Twi'lek that you see on every YouTube thumbnail out there. To me, she represents identity written over with power. That is where I think we're going here. Maul Shadowlord made it very clear that she was a Padawan. They made it very clear that she does still believe in what they stand by, even though Maul called her out on being indoctrinated as a child into this cult. I don't remember what his exact quote was, but I was here for it. However, when she responds, I still believe in those things, but we also just saw her trying to steal. I think she might be saying that to herself more to convince herself that that's what she wants. So the idea of identity being written over with power is something that I think we're going to see. So connecting Devin to Talon can mean so much more than honoring Legends or bringing more of George's ideas into this new era, which, by the way, I'm here for. I loved the idea that we've heard about what George's sequel trilogy would have been. So if we can get that in other forms and get a lot of that back, please take me to the mitochondrial DNA of the Force. Like, I want to see that, whatever that might look like. I'm here for the trip. It's going to be great. But I think recognizing a pattern in Star Wars keeps things alive. And I think it's that pattern that we're recognizing that is what we are so excited about with Devin, because she's caught between identity and transformation, or a character trapped between choice and destiny. That is in Star Wars. It's in Star Wars' DNA. It's what Star Wars loves to do. And right now, Devin sits right in that threshold of choice versus destiny, past versus future. Maybe for canon obsessives, she matters whether or not she's going to be Darth Talon or not. But for the story, it's not the point. It's not about a label. It's about the fall, or it's about the resistance to that fall, or what causes either the resistance or the fall itself. That is what it's all about. And that is what I'm very excited about with Devin. And while watching her story, it got me thinking a little bit about the sequel trilogy. So can we step into just a little different of a timeline for a second? Let's rewrite history, if you will, and let's step into a little bit of sequel trilogy shade, if you will. So I guess right now, if you love The Last Jedi or you love The Rise of Skywalker, why would you? Just know that I'm undecided on how I feel about both of those films, all three, the sequel trilogy in general. I'm undecided. I don't know. But some shade is about to be thrown. Nonetheless, love and light. It's always with love and light. I love Star Wars. Even the Star Wars that is not my favorite, I still love it. Don't unlike this video. All right. What if after the throne room in that lightsaber duel in The Last Jedi, the one that never causes any internet debates, nothing about The Last Jedi ever causes drama online, the one between Maul, Kylo, and all the red guards and the curtains that fly up into flames, our queen of all queens, Snoke chopped in half, our Liberace of Star Wars no more. During that fight, at the end of that fight, what if Kylo Ren actually died? No, I don't mean metaphorically, not symbolically, but dead as a doornail. And what if in that moment he comes back as Ben Solo? What if the last arc of The Last Jedi was actually about Ben Solo, and the split finally resolves itself after an entire almost 2 whole movies? What if that resolved itself and the struggle of his entire arc, who he is he a solo Skywalker that he was born to be, or is he Kylo Ren and the choices that he made? Is he light? Is he dark? What if that was the struggle? That was the struggle that made the character so great until they turned it into a bit of a joke with the more, whatever that business was. But what if in that scene, Kylo dies, Ben lives, and at that same moment, Rey is revealed not as a nobody, but as the Palpatine that she ultimately is? What if she was given a legacy that she never asked for, but one that reshapes everything? And instead of resisting it, she turns decisively, because power finally makes emotional sense to her in a way that restraint never did. So by the end of The Last Jedi, the board is already flipped. Rey slipped into darkness at the end of the film. Ben is on that ship at the end of the Millennium Falcon with Leia, not Rey. There is no Broom Boy. There is no hope for the Jedi to return. That one change reframes everything. And with it, The Rise of Skywalker being about redemption becomes more about us watching someone we care about slowly disappear into the power, into the darkness. Will she become Emperor 2.0, Empress Skywalker, or Empress Palpatine? Will that be our girl, Rey? Rey falls in that one moment. She falls further into darkness with every choice, big or small, all throughout The Rise of Skywalker. And after that, after the question becomes, can she come back? Not because of destiny, not because of a redemption arc, not because someone refuses to give up on, not ownership, but shared survival after a collapse. That, to me, would bring Ben and Rey together in a beautiful way. To see them get married at the end of that movie, very reminiscent to Anakin and Padme, could be so beautiful. It would have been so rad. Maybe we could have gone back to Octu, stood on that same cliff where she met Luke Skywalker, and together, maybe they actually adopt the name Skywalker, ditch Solo, because they know that the word Skywalker has so much meaning and hope in the galaxy. And when it looked like all was lost, the Skywalkers come back. I want that movie. But maybe we can get that now in a story like this with Devin. Maybe it's in Shadow lore that Devin isn't Destiny because she isn't wrapped in legends. Maybe in this story, because she isn't Darth Talon, because she's not canon yet, she isn't wrapped in that destiny. She right now is instability in motion. Because of who legend says she can be, she could fall or she could rise. She could exist in both states. Perhaps that's her role now in canon, is maybe playing with a little bit of legends versus now. And that could be what's interesting. And Maul represents the gravitational pull of that repetition. Because of what cycles do, they recruit. She will break the darkness like characters often do. Or will she remain in the dark? What pattern is going to repeat itself? Is it going to be Maul and his sissiness rolling that boulder up that hill? Or is Devin going to become more like one of the heroes that we all know and love from Star Wars? Maybe she is going to become the main character at the end of all of this. That's the story that I keep coming back to. Not the heroes, not the clean redemption arcs, but the cycles. It's the cycles and the return of stories time after time after time, and stories of choice, because that, for me, is what Star Wars represents, is about breaking a cycle. And right now, a character standing at that exact moment where everything can collapse further or finally break differently, given the time, given the opportunity for interruptions. That's Devin. That's the Star Wars that I actually want to watch.
From Kenner's Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back collection, it's Millennium Falcon that you put together. Batteries not included.
Nice landing, Han Solo. Uh-oh, come on, Chewbacca. Stormtroopers are coming.
Action figures each sold separately.
Got him on radar. I'll fire the laser cannon.
There's even a hidden storage hatch.
Ready for takeoff. Jump to light speed. We're gone. On to the Death Star.
Millennium Falcon from Kenner's Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back collection. Action figures each sold separately.
So when we ask, is Maul Shadow Lord making it fun to be a Star Wars fan again, isn't the right question. Maybe a better question would be, are we still willing to watch characters break without forcing them to stay whole? Because Star Wars isn't mythology, it's interruption theory, dressed as a space opera. Some characters get interrupted, some don't, and the rest, well, they become legends or warnings or both. Thank you for listening. Follow me on Threads and Instagram at Serving Pink Milk. And until next time, let's drink up